Why Nations Fail, written by Daron Acemoglu and James A. Robinson, examines the deep-rooted causes behind the prosperity or poverty of nations. The authors argue that political and economic institutions are the fundamental drivers of a nation's success or failure, rather than culture, geography, or other often-cited factors. The book presents a comprehensive analysis of how inclusive institutions promote prosperity, while extractive institutions, which concentrate power and wealth in the hands of a few, lead to stagnation and decline. Acemoglu and Robinson introduce the concept of inclusive institutions, which are characterized by political systems that distribute power broadly and economic systems that provide opportunities for individuals to engage in economic activity, innovate, and prosper. These inclusive institutions support the rule of law, protect property rights, and create a level playing field where individuals and businesses can compete fairly. In contrast, extractive institutions are those where political and economic power is concentrated in the hands of elites, who create barriers to entry for others and control key resources for their own benefit. These extractive systems hinder innovation, prevent the majority of people from improving their lives, and result in economic stagnation. The authors use historical and contemporary examples to illustrate how nations with inclusive institutions tend to prosper, while those with extractive institutions remain poor or stagnate. They examine the divergent paths of North and South Korea, for example, showing how the political and economic systems in North Korea have led to poverty, while South Korea's inclusive institutions have fostered rapid economic growth and development. Similarly, they explore the different outcomes of countries in Latin America and Sub-Saharan Africa, where extractive institutions have led to long-term poverty and inequality. Acemoglu and Robinson argue that the key to understanding why nations fail lies in the relationship between political and economic institutions. They explain that inclusive economic institutions cannot thrive without inclusive political institutions. When political power is concentrated in the hands of a few, those in power have little incentive to create inclusive economic institutions. Instead, they maintain extractive systems that benefit the elite at the expense of the broader population. This dynamic leads to a cycle of inequality and stagnation that is difficult to break. One of the central themes of the book is that nations fail because their institutions are shaped by historical events and processes that create entrenched patterns of inequality. The authors point out that colonialism, for instance, played a significant role in shaping the institutions of many countries, particularly in Africa and Latin America. European powers established extractive institutions in these regions that continued long after independence, leading to enduring poverty and inequality. Despite the power of extractive institutions, Acemoglu and Robinson emphasize that change is possible. They argue that nations can escape the trap of extractive institutions by fostering inclusive political change. This requires creating broad-based political systems that allow for greater participation, protect individual rights, and encourage economic innovation. The authors also stress the importance of leadership, public pressure, and social movements in pushing for institutional reform. In conclusion, Why Nations Fail provides a compelling argument that the prosperity of nations is not determined by geography, culture, or other external factors, but by the quality of their political and economic institutions. Acemoglu and Robinson's analysis underscores the importance of inclusive institutions in fostering long-term growth and development. By examining the historical and contemporary examples of nations around the world, the book highlights how extractive institutions can trap nations in cycles of poverty, but also offers hope by demonstrating that change is possible through institutional reform and inclusive governance.